Today we're going to talk about how do you know if a prospect really doesn't have the money or if it's just a smokescreen objection. This is an easy one once you know the formula. Let's say the prospect says, we just don't have the money, the budget, the funds right now. Now your first reaction is to not get defensive, whatever you do, or otherwise the deal is done. You simply say something like this. Yeah, that's not a problem. Tell me, if you did have the funding, is this something that would work for you? Now, if you've asked the right questions in the conversation, they're always going to say yes. Now, that could say funding, funds, money, budget, depending on what you sell. Now, here's where you find out if this is just a smokescreen objection or not. When you say, tell me, if you did have the funds, is this something that would work for you? Now, if they have another concern, they're going to bring it up here and they're going to say something like this. Well, it might be, but I'm not really sure about this. And then they bring up the real concern. Then you can address that concern and help them overcome it and actually close a sale. Now, it could be as well that they have another concern, but they also don't have the funding or budget or money to purchase what you're offering as well, or they don't think they do, which is usually the case. That's a big difference. So here's what you'll need to do to help them overcome the lack of funds issue. Let's start from the top. Now, at any time during the process, the prospect might stop you and bring up another concern, which is what you actually want. You want to be on the call. You want to be on Zoom with them. You want to be face-to-face when they have a concern, rather than having a concern and you're not even there to address it. So let's start from the top, and I'm going to role play with myself. Prospect says, we just don't have the funds for this right now. You say, that's not a problem. Tell me, if you did have the funds, is this something that would work for you? Prospect says, yeah, I think it would. We just don't have the money. Hold on though. Money aside, why do you feel like it would work for you? Now this is an NEPQ probing question here that will then get them to tell you, and more importantly themselves, why they feel it's actually what they're looking for. Prospect says, well, we like X and Y and Z, but we just don't have the money for it. You say, okay, and I can appreciate that money might be an issue for you from what you said. I guess, how do you think you can resolve that where you can find the money so that you can, and then you plug in and repeat back what they said they wanted. You're tying in them getting the funding, the money, with having what they said they wanted. If they don't get the funding, the money, they can't have what they said they want. See how that works? Now, when you do this correctly, they'll be the ones coming up with solutions on how to find the funds. They'll think about using a credit card, getting a loan, refinancing their house, borrowing from their 401k, other investments, or maybe if you're in more of a complex selling environment, taking money from a different department and investing in your solution. Now, if you cannot come up with ways on how they can get the money, if they can't, you can simply ask this question next. Well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding so that you can? And here again, you repeat back in the second thing they said they wanted. Now, let me give you a few examples, just different industries, okay? We train hundreds of different industries, so I just pulled 4 out. Let's say if you sold home security systems. Well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to be able to protect the home and family from intruders breaking in though? Let's say if you sold health coaching, you're trying to get people healthy. Well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to be able to lose this 80 pounds you talked about so you're able to watch your grandkids grow up, if that was their concern? If you sell rental or commercial properties, well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to purchase this rental property so you can get a greater return on your money? If that was their concern, they want to get a greater return on their money. How about if you sold lead services or marketing for companies? Well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to start getting a higher quality of lead so your salespeople can make more sales for you? If that was their concern. Let's say if you sold life insurance. Well, what other avenues do you have to find the funding to get, I guess, stronger protection for your wife and kids when something does happen to you? See how that works? Okay, we just went over how do you know if a prospect really doesn't have the money or if it's just a smokescreen. Today we're going to talk about how can you avoid being seen as pushy when you're talking to your prospect. Now, one of the biggest reasons that entrepreneurs and salespeople are viewed by prospects as pushy when they're trying to sell is they come across way too enthusiastic about their product and service, and then they try to talk about their solution way too early in that conversation. Now, I know you guys are like, what, Jeremy? I've always been taught that I have to be excited about my products. And I would totally agree with you. But you have to keep your excitement to yourself. Keep it internal. Don't let them see that. You have to get rid of the commission breath. seriously get rid of the commission breath. It's not helping you. Realize this. According to behavioral science, within the first 7 to 12 seconds of every sales call or any sales interaction you're in, whether it's in a boardroom meeting, door to door, cold calling on a phone, on Zoom, on Skype, doesn't matter, your prospects are subconsciously picking up verbal and nonverbal cues from you, from your tonality and what you are saying and or asking that triggers their brain to do one of two things. Number one, if you come across aggressive or needy and attached and you don't know the right questions to ask, it triggers their brain to go into what we call fight or flight mode, where they try to get rid of you fast and say things like, I'm too busy now, can you call me back later? Or, we're good, or we don't need it, or we already have that, or we don't have any money for that, or can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later? Does that ever happen to you? Now you know why. Or, if you do come across the right way, if you come across neutral, unbiased, and detached, and you know the right questions to ask, it triggers their brain to become curious enough that they feel like they want to engage, that they want to open up to you because you might have something that's very important to them. So we have to come across detached from the expectations of making the sale and really focus on whether there's even a sale to be made in the first place, whether or not they have problems that you can actually help them solve. Now, do I mean that you should get on a call and not make a sale? Hell no. Your goal is to make a sale on every call, every meeting you're in, but you have to keep that to yourself. The moment they feel that they are being sold to is the moment they do what? They start to shut down. They are closed off to any of your questions, the walls of resistance come up, and the sale is pretty much over. Okay, we just went over how you avoid being seen as pushy when you're talking to your prospects, and that is your tip for the day. Today we're going to talk about how much time should you give to presenting your offer, your solution, and really why. First of all, write this down. Behavioral science has confirmed we are the least persuasive when we tell people things or we attempt to dominate them, posture them, or push them into doing something that we want them to do. Most salespeople have been taught how to sell using this type of formula. The first part of the sale is about building rapport. That would be about 10% of the conversation. Asking BS questions like, how's the weather where you're at? How you doing today? Did you see the game last night? Never ask those type of questions. The prospect knows that you're not genuine. They know what you're doing. Then the next 10%, you're probably taught to ask questions about the prospect's needs. Never sell to needs, as most of your prospects don't even know what their real problems are before they talk to you. You sell to future problems they didn't know they had. How about this? John, can you tell me 1 to 2 problems you're having right now? Or Amy, what keeps you awake at night? Boring. Never ask those type of consultative questions. They don't work in our day and age. They're so outdated. Then the next 50% of the sale, you jump into your pitch or your presentation, talking about all the features and benefits of your product and service and how you have the best this and the best that, which, by the way, every salesperson says they have the best product, right? How many salespeople do you know that say they have the 5th best product in the market? No one. They all say they have the best. And then the last 30% of the sale, the salesperson goes in for the close and then gets objections and tries to overcome the objections with rebuttals and then starts chasing them. How exhausting. Who would want to do that? Does that sound familiar? Now notice 50% of the sale, most are taught that they need to be presenting or pitching half of the conversation. You've got to stop doing this if you want to be at the very top in sales. 50% is way too much. The presentation stage should only be about 10 to 15% of the sale. It's about presenting back the challenges and problems they told you during the discovery part of the sales process and presenting back how your solution can solve those challenges to get them what they want. Nothing more, nothing less. You see, the amount of information the prospect needs to know will always be far less than what a salesperson thinks it is. So let me give you the 3-part structure that you want to do your presentation around. Now there's some slight differences depending on if you sell B2C or B2B, but the structure is very similar. Number 1, you want to go over the problems they told you they had and other problems that other prospects have that come to you. Let me give you an example. John, one problem that most people have when they come to us is they don't know how to X and Y and Z. And you repeat back that problem. Or you can reword it this way. One big problem that companies have that come to us is they feel they and you repeat back the problem. Or remember how you were saying that you, and you repeat back their problem they said they had. Then the second part of that pillar is this format. So the way we solve that for our clients, John, is and then you go over the individual parts of your product or service or program or whatever you sell that solves that specific problem you just brought up. Then the third part of the pillar is this. And what that means for you is, and what that means to you is, and then you go over the advantages and benefits of what it's going to do for them once the problem is solved, and what that means for them to get where they want to be or what they want, what that actually looks like. We call that their objective state. Now, when you present using this formula, what it does is it connects the dots of what they brought up in your discovery part of your sales process, the specific problems, the root cause of the problem, and how it's affecting them. It connects the dots of those problems to how you solve those problems for other clients like themselves, and then what that means to them, what solving those problems will do for them even personally. That's how you get your prospect to buy in and feel you are the only solution that can get them what they want. Okay, we just went over how much time do you need to present your solution to your prospects and why. Today we're going to talk about what do you ask first if a prospect says, it's just too expensive, so you know what they actually mean. There's no point in proceeding to help them overcome their objection if you don't completely understand what their objection even means, like what's behind that objection. You see, most salespeople think that because they've heard it's too expensive so many times from so many other prospects that they just assume that they know what that means, and then they deliver a canned rebuttal. But the question has to be asked, do you really know what that specific objection means in that prospect's mind? What does the too expensive objection really mean to them? What's behind it? Does it mean it's too expensive to pay right now and they need a few days to get the funds together? Does it mean it's too expensive compared to a competitor? Does it mean it's too expensive to pay up front and they need a payment plan or help getting the funding? Does it mean they don't have the budget for it all? It's too expensive in relation to what? When you don't know exactly what your prospect's talking about, your assumptions will end up costing you a lot of sales. So always be sure to fully understand what the objection means, what's behind it. We do this by asking what's called NEPQ clarifying questions. Let me give you an example of this. I'll just role play with myself. Prospect says, this is just too expensive for our company. You say, how do you mean by it's too expensive? Prospect says, well, another company I'm looking at is almost 12% cheaper for the same service. Do you see how that works? The salesperson now knows what the prospect means when they say it's too expensive. Now, in other situations, it could mean something completely different. It could mean, we just don't have the budget for this right now, or your quote would be too high for us once we add in repairs and maintenance costs, or we have to hire additional people to implement your software and we don't have the budget for that. See, it could mean different things. Can you see how each of those answers reveal a different reason for the objection of, this is too expensive? Now, you also have to make sure that you uncover the reason that's actually behind that concern, not just the meaning of the concern. You need to find out why they have the concern in the first place. What's caused them to have the concern? If you understand their objections, you are far better prepared to ask the right question to help them overcome their own concern. So let me give you another example. I'll role play with myself again. Prospect says, this proposal is just too expensive for the company. You say, how do you mean exactly? They say, well, the most we could pay for this service is about $8,000 a month, like max, and you're quoting me almost 12. Can I ask you how you arrived at that monthly figure of $8,000 a month? Clarifying question. Prospect says, well, it's what our CEO allocated us to be able to spend on this type of service because we've had a recent merger and we've had a lot of cutbacks. Well, now the salesperson can see the picture a lot more clearly than before. The meaning of it's too expensive is that the CEO only gave them $8,000 a month due to cutbacks because the company had just gone through a merger. This extra knowledge, the salesperson may be able to negotiate a different agreement on the price, perhaps changing the service options from the original offer or giving them a different type of service that matches the lower budget. Now, even better than that, once you learn the right skills, you'll be able to help the prospect see how bad their problems really are, or the consequences of not solving these problems, and help him or her go and find the extra budget or funding from another department to put into your solution to actually solve the problem. So asking skilled questions about their concern helps you get better information that clarifies their concern and aids you in finding a solution. You're also helping the prospect think and overcome their own concerns as well. So I'm going to give you a few clarifying questions you can ask your prospects to better understand exactly what their concerns mean. Write these down. How did you arrive at that? Or, can you tell me more about that? Or, how do you mean by that? Or, what do you mean by that? Or, when you say, can you tell me what that means? Or when you say, repeat whatever they said, what did you mean by that? See how that works? Okay, we just went over what to do if a prospect says it's just too expensive, so you know what they mean. Today we're gonna talk about what to do when the lead ghosts you. Okay, so you've had a great discovery call, maybe a great demo, a great presentation. The prospect seems so into what you're offering. Maybe they even said they're ready to go. It seems like the sale was yours, but then poof, the prospect just goes missing, MIA, they disappear. You call, you text, you send emails and nothing, they don't respond. What the heck are you gonna do? Actually, it's very simple. Whether you sell B2B or B2C, you can use this one small text and email that will get most of your prospects, I'm talking 90%, to respond with the truth of what's really going on. Because wouldn't you rather know what the truth is rather than just them leading you on and ghosting you? You simply craft this email, text. You can even leave this in a voicemail. It's short, it's concise, it's right to the point. But more importantly, it actually works. Here's the example. This can be in a text or email or voicemail, like I said. Hey Sally, we tried to reach you a few times, but we didn't hear back from you. Then you go ... It's important you do 4 dots. Then you space down like 2 lines and you say this. How do you want to proceed from here? ? Or you can reword it to this. Where do you think we should go from here? ? And that's it. No waffling, no 2 or 3 or 4 paragraph emails or texts with a bunch of fluff in them and stats and testimonials that makes you appear desperate to make the sale. You simply address you tried to reach them a few times but didn't hear back, and then you ask, you scroll down a couple lines, how do you want to proceed from here? Or where do you think we should go from here? Once you send that email or text, see what happens. You're gonna be shocked on how most of your prospects will return that email or text within a few minutes to an hour with the truth of what is really going on. A lot of times they just say this, they'll be like, oh, I just got super swamped, I'm so sorry, we're ready to go. Or they might say, hey, I got swamped, but we still got a few questions. Or, well, we decided to go with someone else. Or our CEO has some concerns, maybe we could schedule a call. Now, if they have some concerns, at least you now know what they are, and you're in a much better position now to be able to help them resolve their concerns because you know the truth of what's really going on in that sale. When you simply ask a lead that ghosts you, how do you want to proceed from here? Or where do you think we should go from here? It shows them that you're not desperate. You don't need them to buy. You've got a ton of clients. You don't need to chase them. You're pretty much doing them a favor to pay your company to solve their problems and get them where they want to be. You see, it triggers them to view you more as an expert, more as a trusted authority who's there to help them solve their problems and get them where they're wanting to go. You're welcome. All right, we just went over what to do when a lead ghosts you. What do you do when the prospect says, I need to talk to my spouse or my business partner? Here's something you have to realize. When your prospect says, I need to talk to my spouse or business partner, it's for 1 or 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is you haven't pulled out enough emotion from the questions you've asked to help them see the problems clearly in their mind that they have, and for them to feel urgency to solve those to get where they're wanting to go. So because of that, they are just saying that to get rid of you. Now, this is all on us as a salesperson because our lack of questioning skills. Now, the second reason is that it's just logistical. The spouse, or let's say the business partner, is interested, but they just discuss things when they make major purchases. Now, if it's more of a B2B complex selling environment, it's not talking to the spouse, it's talking to the other owners or other decision makers in the company. So it's a bit different, which I will show you towards the end of the video. Based on how the call went from their tonality, body language, and the answers to your questions will tell you which of these they're gonna fall into. Now, no matter which one they fall into, your original reaction can be very simple, very similar. You simply first want to acknowledge what they said, then you set up a time the next day ideally, or day after, to talk again to either them or ideally both of them. Here's how it might look. Now, I'm gonna give you a generic example so you can plug in your industry, and then I'm gonna show you how it looks in a few other industries so you can see how the structure works. Once again, this works for any product, service, or industry. It doesn't matter what you sell. Okay, so I'm gonna role play with myself. Prospect says, this sounds good, but I just need to talk to my spouse. We always make these decisions together as a family. You're gonna say, yeah, that's not a problem. How does your spouse feel about you? Blank. Repeat back what they said they wanted. Prospect says, oh, I think they'd want me to do this, but I just need to run it by them first. You say, yeah, okay, well, hold on though. What are you gonna do if you go to them and they don't want you to get the funding so that you can, and you repeat back the benefit of what they said they wanted. Funding, budget, money, depending on what you sell. Prospect says, yeah, I understand, I'm just not sure what they're gonna say about this. You say, well, how will you blank, repeat back what they said they wanted, if they don't let you then, okay? Prospect says, yeah, I know I need to do something about this. Now, let's stop there. At this point, you usually can just resolve the concern they have here and make the sale. But if you still can't do that here, then you book a second call. Now, once again, it depends on what you sell, what industry you're in is how we're gonna language that. Salesperson says, I understand. I guess what's your time frame on getting back with me today or tomorrow just to see if I'd be available for you? They're gonna answer and they're gonna say something like this. Well, I could call you back in the next few days, I guess. Don't take that at face value. They're not gonna call you back. You say this. Well, what I can do if it helps is if you have your calendar handy, I can pull up mine. That way you can book a specific time with me in the next day or so you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. Would that be appropriate? Notice I say so you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. This positions you once again as the expert who's busy helping a lot of other clients solve their problems, so it's attractive to your prospects. Makes you look as like you know what you're doing. Never say you're gonna be available late at night or on the weekends when they ask for that. It makes you look desperate. And when you look desperate, you're not viewed by them as the authority. You're not viewed as them as a trusted expert. You're viewed as just another salesperson trying to sell you something, so they push you off to the corner and they commoditize you. Now, let's do this. Let me show you what it looks like once you throw in a specific industry. In this example, let's say that you sell lead services to companies, maybe small business owners. Now, if you sell B2B, talking to business owners, it's the same structure depending on the accounts that you're selling to. Prospect might say something like this. This sounds good, but I really need to speak to my business partner to see what they think. You just agree. You say this. Yeah, that's not a problem. I guess how does your business partner feel about you guys getting a higher, more qualified lead to your sales team so that they can make more sales? Notice how I'm plugging in what they said they wanted, which was a higher quality lead, and I tie in the result of that better lead, which is to what? Make more sales. Remember, people don't buy your thing. They don't buy the thing. They buy the results of that thing. They buy the results of your products or service. Prospect says, well, yeah, I think they'd want better leads for sure. Who wouldn't want better leads, Jeremy? You say, well, hold on though. What are you gonna do if you go to them and they don't want you to put in the extra funding to get the higher quality leads and your sales keep going down like you've mentioned the next 3, 6, or even 12 months from now? Say that with a skeptical tone. That's a consequence question that we're asking to get the prospect to realize what would happen if they don't do anything. Prospect's gonna come back and say, oh yeah, we're gonna have to do something for sure, otherwise we could go under with that type of result for sure. Salesperson says, okay, well, would it help you if we set up a call with your business partner and you to discuss how we might be able to solve that problem for you? Now, especially if they have a business partner or there are other decision makers, it's more of a B2B environment. Realize this, the average company has 6.8 decision makers, regular sized companies. Then you'd want those other decision maker or makers on the next call. Prospect might say, yeah, that might actually help me. Then you're gonna set up another call like I taught you a few minutes before. Now remember, if you're selling B2B, more than likely gonna set up another call to talk with the other decision makers. If you're selling lower value products or service, more B2C, a lot of the times you can help them overcome the concern in the first call and actually close them. Okay, we just went over, what do you do when the prospect says, I wanna talk to my spouse or business partner? Today we're gonna talk about how to get your prospects to close themselves. 3 ways of selling. Our data shows this when we survey salespeople and companies at events where we train. The first way of selling, error 1, which is push them, pitch them, assume the sale, boiler room selling, sell on the opportunity, which was taught in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, 73% are still using some form of this selling, pushing, pitching, assume the sale, and it doesn't matter the industry. 73%, I can't even believe that. Second way of selling, era 2 of selling, consultative, logical-based questions to find out the needs, came out in the 80s and 90s with books like Spin Selling, 26%. So 26% we survey are still using era 2 ways of selling, consultative selling, or some type of repackaged form of that. Now the third era of selling, according to behavioral science, the most persuasive way to sell, getting the prospect to persuade themselves with neuro-emotional persuasion questioning, is less than 1%. So here's the challenge with that. If you're still selling using era 1 or era 2 techniques that according to the science work against human behavior, that's triggering sales resistance, but today's information age buyers, your prospects, are up here in era 3 way of thinking, meaning today's consumer does not want to be talked at and sold to, they want to be asked, heard, and most importantly understood. Do you see the friction of why you're not able to sell as much as what you really want to be? You just might be still using techniques that for the most part are outdated from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years ago, but the consumer has completely changed even in the last several few years. Now, luckily for you, this can all be fixed. All right, we just went over the 3 ways to sell and how to get the prospect to close themselves. Hey guys, Jeremy Miner here. Today we're going to talk about what questions do you need to ask to go under the surface with your prospects and have them tell you what's really going on rather than shutting you down. Now, let me give you some more examples of what are called NEPQ clarifying and probing questions that need to be asked. These are very important to get your prospect to go under the surface with their answers and tell you what's really going on in their world, like what problems do they really have and what's causing the problems, the root cause. These questions also help you clarify what your prospect is saying so you uncover the true meaning. They also help you probe deeper to pull out your potential customers' emotions, which psychologically gets them to want to change their situation now with you, which builds urgency rather than them waiting down the road. These questions have some of the most persuasive powers you will ever ask, and they're so simple to ask. How about this one? This is a simple one. John, when you say, how do you mean by that? Or how do you mean exactly? Now, if the prospect says they're stressed, you simply can just repeat back that word, stressed. Or if they said they're frustrated, you could say frustrated. Or if they said, I'm annoyed, how do you mean by annoyed? Or annoyed? Just repeating that one word is called a probing statement. You just repeat back that one emotional word and watch how they open up. I want you to do that today and see how they respond to that. Or you can say it like this. When you say stress, how do you mean exactly? Or what do you mean by stress? Okay, or you could reword it this way. How long has that been going on for? So when they tell you a problem, how long has that been going on for? Oh, for 3 years, prospect says. This question gets them to relive the pain in their mind of how long it's been happening to them. So this stress that you've had the last 3 years, has that had an impact on you? See that question? Notice how I paused there when I said impact on you. Why do we do that from there? Because it causes them to think deeper about that question rather than just throwing out a knee-jerk reaction. Let them answer, oh yeah, you have no idea, okay? Then you're gonna ask this question. Well, hold on, in what way though? Okay, that helps them relive more pain and clarify that pain in their own mind. Here are a few more examples of NEPQ clarifying and probing questions to ask that will work for any industry, any product, service, it does not matter. We train hundreds of industries at this point. John, what's causing this to happen? Or, James, what's prompting you to look into changing this now though? Or, Earl, can I ask what originally led you to this decision in the first place? Or, Amy, why so important to you now though? Or, Cindy, can you be more specific? Or, give me an example. What do you mean by that? Here's another way. Tell me what's driving the need to change your situation now? Or how about this? Can you walk me through the steps that led you to this conclusion though? How about this one? What would it mean for you to be able to solve this problem? How about this one? What's in it for you to implement this for your company though? Now, if you sold B2B, this would be an excellent question. What's in it for you to implement this for the company though? You see, that question helps you find out what's behind this person's why and what it's going to do for them to bring you in to solve these problems in the company. It brings out their emotions. Let me give you another example, and I'm just going to role play with myself. Prospect says, you know, we've been trying to get both of these projects off the ground for months now. You would ask, hold on, you mentioned you've been trying. What hasn't worked for you so far? You see, trying is the key word there. That word represents a human feeling of frustration about not being able to accomplish the goal. That's your golden opportunity to bring out the prospect's problems to the surface of his or her mind, to have them relive the pain and their feelings, and then that triggers them to be open to your solution to solve that pain. Do you see how that works? Okay. We just went over what questions to ask to go under the surface with your prospects and have them tell you what's really going on, the truth. Hey guys, Jeremy Miner here. Today we're going to talk about how do you help your prospect overcome the fear of purchasing your solution and changing, making a change. The first thing we have to understand if we want to succeed in sales is all selling is change. It's all about change. All sales are about one thing only, and that's change. So whether your prospects want something better or they're just trying to get away from pain, it's really all about change. It's about how good you are at helping your prospects see in their mind that changing their situation, so paying for your service or product, is far less risky for them than doing nothing at all, staying in the status quo, and their problems stay the same and nothing ever changes for them. Now here's your problem though. Your potential customers don't like change, even though they say they do. Why? Because it makes most of us feel unsettled and uncomfortable, particularly when it's initiated by pushy salespeople ready to pitch their products or services. Research shows that human beings do not like change. Repeatedly, human behavior shows that we value tradition, consistency, and something that's familiar, even if we don't like it that much, over something that is new and foreign or unknown to us. Realize this and write this down. You are not selling the thing. You're not selling your product or service. You're selling them the results of that thing. You're selling them the results of what your product or service will do for them. So your selling ability will depend on if you can get your prospect away from cost-based thinking over to results-based thinking. Now, what does that mean? Selling is about helping your prospects feel secure enough to let their defenses down, their walls down, and share what their real problems are, what's caused the problem, how it's affecting them to a point where they feel safe enough to admit that they're ready to change their situation in their own mind, to either something better than they have, or to get away from all that pain of their problems. So you have to ask the right questions to get them to see that it's far less risky to change their situation, purchase your solution, and get them where they want to be, rather than doing nothing at all and staying in the status quo and their problems just stay the same. Now, I'm going to give you a good question you can ask your prospects to get them overcoming that fear-based thinking and start thinking results-based thinking. I'm going to give it to you generic so you can plug it in industry. Let's say your prospect's waffling around about purchasing what you're offering. You simply ask this. Well, Amy, you tell me which is more risky. You getting the funds together to solve this problem so that you can, and you repeat back what they said they wanted, or is it more risky for you to just do nothing at all, the problem stays the same and nothing ever changes for you? Which is more risky? Watch how your prospect tells you automatically, oh my gosh, it's far more risky if I don't do anything. See how that works? Okay, we just went over how do you help your prospect overcome the fear of purchasing your solution. Today we're going to talk about what do you do when the prospect says, I need to think it over. When your prospect says, I want to think it over, most of the time this is because you've not asked the right questions at the right time in that conversation to help them see clearly what their problems are, the root cause of the problems, and how the problems are affecting them. Remember, you can't tell them that. You have to ask the right questions that allow them to tell themselves that. And when they tell themselves, they do what? They start to persuade themselves. It creates urgency as well for them to want to purchase now, not weeks or months down the road. Now, let me give you this. If you are in a more B2B complex selling environment, you will have a longer sales cycle than probably 1 or 2 calls. Depends on what industry you're in, obviously. Now realize this. if they feel that the problem is not that bad, because you couldn't help them see that because your question was way off, it causes them to feel that the problem they have might not be that bad at all, or maybe what you told them, they don't feel that you can get them the results they want. Here's what we all have to understand. There has to be a gap in their mind of where they are now. We call that their current state or situation compared to where they want to be. We call that their objective state. And what's holding them back from getting what they want? Those problems. The larger the gap, the more urgency there is for them to do something and change now, not later. Let me give you an example of how to resolve this concern. I'm going to give you a generic example, not industry specific right here. Prospect says, this sounds good, but let me think it over. You say, yeah, that's not a problem. What's your time frame on getting back to me in the next day or two just to see if I'd be available for you? Now, once again, positions you as busy with other clients. You don't need the sale. And it also removes the sales pressure out of the call immediately because they think you're about to leave. Prospect says, well, I guess I could call you back in a few days. Don't take that. You need to schedule a time. No waffling. You say, okay, well, I don't know if I'd be available in a few days. What I can do for you, if you have your calendar handy, I can pull up mine and have you book a specific time with me. That way you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. Would that be appropriate? Then as you're about to leave, like you're out the door or off of Zoom or off the call, wherever you're doing, you say this. Now, John, before I go, what were you wanting to go over in your mind, just so I know what questions you might have when we talk tomorrow? You say what you want to go over in your mind, much better than saying, what do you want to think over? That sounds awkward and nobody's not going to open up. But when you say, what was it that you're wanting to go over before we talk tomorrow so I know what questions you might have, watch how they open up. They're going to tell you what their concern is. They're going to say, well, I just want to know, or, I feel about this. Then you're able to help clarify what the concern is, discuss it as two people who are trying to work out the solution, and then ask a diffusing question. Remember, selling is not adversarial. It's supposed to be collaborative if you want to be the very best in sales. Okay, we just went over what to do when your prospect says, I want to think it over, and that is your tip for the day.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed these, here's another you can watch. Join our free Sales Revolution group. Click the link below, join us, and we're gonna help you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon.